A tired biker stops on a lonely road and finds a scared little girl and her injured whistleblower mother. He only meant to help them for a moment, but they cling to him like he's their only safe place, and before he knows it, the biker becomes the one person they trust enough to hold on to. The forest highway stretched black and empty under a moonless sky. Rafe's motorcycle hummed beneath him, the only sound cutting through the thick silence of towering pines. He'd been riding for 6 hours straight, eager to get home after a week of working construction 3 states over. His leather jacket blocked the cold wind, but his mind was somewhere else, counting the miles left, thinking about the hot shower and bed waiting for him. Then he saw the glow. Orange. Flickering. Wrong. Rafe's instincts kicked in before his brain caught up. He squeezed the brakes, and his bike skidded slightly on loose gravel as he slowed. Through the trees, about 50 yards off the road, flames licked upward into the darkness. The smell hit him next, burning rubber, gasoline, something chemical and sharp that made his eyes water. A car. Flipped upside down in a ditch. Damn it, Rafe muttered, killing his engine. He kicked the stand down and ran toward the wreck, his boots crunching through dry brush and pine needles. The closer he got, the worse it looked. The car, a silver sedan, was crumpled like a tin can, its roof crushed against the earth, windows shattered into glittering fragments across the dirt. Flames crawled along the undercarriage, creeping toward the fuel tank. Rafe could hear it, the low hiss of fire meeting gasoline, the ticking of hot metal. He didn't have much time. "Hello?" he shouted, dropping to his knees beside the driver's side window. "Anyone in there?" At first, nothing. Just the roar of flames and his own ragged breathing. Then, a small voice. Weak. Terrified. "Help. Please." Rafe's heart slammed against his ribs. He pressed his face closer to the broken window, shielding his eyes from the smoke. Inside, he could make out 2 figures. A woman slumped against the steering wheel, unconscious, blood trickling from a gash on her forehead. And beside her, in the passenger seat, a little girl, maybe 6 years old, staring at him with wide, tear-filled eyes. Her face was smeared with dirt and blood. Her small hands gripped the seatbelt like it was the only thing keeping her alive. "I'm gonna get you out," Rafe said, his voice steady despite the panic clawing at his chest. "Hold on, kid." He reached through the shattered window, fumbling for the seatbelt release. The metal was hot, almost burning his fingers, but he pressed the button and the belt snapped free. The little girl didn't move. She just stared at him, her lips trembling. "Come on," Rafe urged, reaching for her. "We have to go. Now." But she didn't reach back. Instead, she turned her head toward the woman, her mother, Rafe realized, and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "Take my mommy," the little girl whispered, her voice breaking. "Not me. Please. She's hurt worse." Rafe froze. For a moment, the world narrowed to just those words. The flames, the smoke, the ticking time bomb of a fuel tank, all of it faded into the background. He stared at this tiny child, bruised and bleeding, begging him to leave her behind. "Kid, listen to me. Please," she sobbed, her small hands pushing against his arm. "Take her first. I'll wait. I promise I'll be brave." The heat intensified. Rafe could feel it now, radiating from the car's engine, crawling up his arms. The flames were spreading faster. He didn't have time to argue. He didn't have time to explain that leaving her would mean she'd burn alive. So he didn't say anything. Instead, he grabbed the little girl by her arms and pulled her out through the window in one swift motion. She cried out, trying to twist free, but he held her tight against his chest with one arm and reached back inside for the mother. The woman was heavier, unconscious, her body limp and awkward. Rafe hooked his free arm under her shoulders and dragged her toward the window. His muscles screamed. His lungs burned from the smoke. But he didn't stop. He pulled her out halfway, then all the way, letting her collapse onto the dirt beside the car. The little girl was screaming now. "Mommy! Mommy, wake up!" Rafe scooped the woman into his arms, hoisting her over his shoulder like a sack of grain. Then he grabbed the little girl's hand and yanked her to her feet. "Run," he barked. They ran. Rafe's legs pumped hard, the woman's weight threatening to topple him with every step. The little girl stumbled beside him, her hand locked in his, her sobs turning into gasping breaths. Behind them, the fire roared louder, hotter, angrier. They made it 20 feet. 30. 40. Then the car exploded. The blast hit like a physical force, a wall of heat and sound that threw Rafe forward. He twisted mid-fall, landing on his side to cushion the woman. The little girl tumbled into the dirt beside him, her scream swallowed by the deafening roar. For a few seconds, Rafe couldn't hear anything but ringing. Couldn't see anything but spots of light dancing in his vision. He coughed, tasting smoke and ash, and forced himself to sit up. The car was gone. Just a burning skeleton of twisted metal and fire. The woman, still unconscious, lay beside him, her chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. Alive. And the little girl sat a few feet away, staring at the wreckage with wide, unblinking eyes. Her face was pale. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Rafe crawled over to her and gently touched her shoulder. She flinched, then turned to look at him. Tears carved clean lines through the dirt on her cheeks. You took both of us," she whispered. Rafe nodded, his throat too tight to speak. The little girl's face crumpled, and she threw her arms around his neck, sobbing into his shoulder. Her small body shook with the force of it, and Rafe held her carefully, like she might break. "It's okay," he said quietly, his voice rough. "You're okay now." But even as he said it, he looked down at the woman, at the bruises, the blood, the unnatural angle of her arm, and knew something was very wrong. This wasn't just an accident. Someone had done this. Rafe's bike wasn't built for passengers, let alone two. But he made it work. He laid the woman, Claire, according to the ID he found in her pocket, across the seat lengthwise, her head resting against the fuel tank. The little girl sat behind him, her thin arms wrapped so tightly around his waist he could barely breathe. She hadn't let go since the explosion. Hadn't stopped shaking either. "What's your name?" Rafe asked as he guided the bike slowly along a narrow dirt path, away from the main highway. The little girl didn't answer at first. Then, so quietly he almost missed it, "Daisy." "Daisy," Rafe repeated. "That's a good name." "I'm Rafe." She didn't respond. Just pressed her face harder against his back. The ranger cabin appeared through the trees like a ghost from another time. Rafe had stumbled across it years ago during a solo camping trip, abandoned, forgotten, miles from any marked trail. The roof sagged in places, and the windows were boarded up, but it was shelter. More importantly, it was hidden. He killed the engine and climbed off carefully, steadying Claire's limp body. Daisy slid down and stood frozen beside the bike, hugging herself against the cold. "Come on," Rafe said, lifting Claire into his arms. Inside. The cabin door hung crooked on rusty hinges. Rafe kicked it open and stepped into darkness that smelled of mildew and old wood. He waited for his eyes to adjust, then spotted a dusty cot against the far wall. He laid Claire down as gently as he could. Daisy appeared in the doorway, a small silhouette against the pale moonlight filtering through the trees. "Is she gonna die?" she asked. Rafe looked at Claire's pale face, the shallow rise and fall of her chest, the blood still seeping through her sleeve. He didn't know. But he wasn't about to tell a 6-year-old that. "Not if I can help it," he said. "Come here. I need you to hold this flashlight." He pulled a small flashlight from his jacket pocket and handed it to Daisy. Her hands trembled as she took it, but she clicked it on and aimed the beam at her mother. Rafe worked quickly. He had basic first aid training from his construction crew, enough to know how to stop bleeding and check for broken bones. He tore strips from an old shirt he found hanging on a nail and used them to bandage the gash on Claire's forehead. Her left arm was definitely broken. He fashioned a makeshift splint from 2 pieces of wood and tied it carefully. "Is it helping?" Daisy whispered, the flashlight beam wavering. "Yeah, kid. You're doing great." He found a rusty bucket outside and filled it with cold water from a nearby stream. Back inside, he used it to clean the dirt and blood from Claire's face and hands. Daisy watched every movement, her eyes never leaving her mother. "You should sleep," Rafe said after he'd done everything he could. "It's late." "No. Daisy. No." Her voice cracked. "If I sleep, she might. She might." She couldn't finish the sentence. Didn't have to. Rafe sank down onto the floor beside the cot, his back against the wall. Every muscle in his body ached. His hands were raw and blistered. But Daisy remained standing, the flashlight clutched in both hands, its beam pointed at her mother like a lifeline. "Come here," Rafe said softly. Daisy hesitated, then walked over and sat beside him, leaving a careful gap between them. She kept the light on Claire. "You know what I think?" Rafe said. "I think your mom is tougher than she looks. I think she's gonna wake up, and the first thing she's gonna want to see is you, rested and safe. But what if she doesn't wake up while I'm sleeping? Then I'll wake you. I promise." Daisy's lower lip trembled. "You promise?" "I promise." She studied his face for a long moment, searching for something. Trust, maybe. Or just a reason to believe him. Finally, she leaned against his shoulder, still holding the flashlight. Her breathing gradually slowed. Rafe thought she'd fallen asleep. Then her small voice cut through the darkness. "Why did you take both of us?" He glanced down at her. "What?" "I told you to take Mommy. I told you she was hurt worse. But you took me too." Her voice was flat, emotionless. "Why?" Rafe didn't know how to answer that. How do you explain to a child that leaving her behind was never an option? That some choices aren't really choices at all? "Because nobody gets left behind," he said finally. "Not on my watch." Daisy was quiet for a moment. "Then, other people left us behind. Lots of times." Before Rafe could ask what she meant, Claire stirred. A low moan escaped her lips, and her eyelids fluttered. "Mommy." Daisy scrambled to her knees, the flashlight clattering to the floor. Claire's eyes opened, unfocused, glassy with pain. She tried to sit up and gasped, collapsing back onto the cot. "Easy," Rafe said, moving beside her. "Don't move. You've got some broken ribs, maybe worse." Claire's gaze found him, confused and afraid. Then she saw Daisy, and something shifted in her expression, relief so profound it was almost painful to witness. "Baby," she whispered, reaching for her daughter with her good arm. Daisy grabbed her mother's hand and pressed it against her cheek, tears streaming down her face. Claire's eyes sharpened, the fog of pain giving way to something else. Something that looked like terror. "They're coming back," she whispered, her voice urgent despite its weakness. "You have to listen to me. They're coming back for us." Rafe felt ice slide down his spine. "Who's coming back?" Claire's fingers tightened around Daisy's hand. Her eyes locked onto Rafe's. "Don't let them find her. Please. Whatever happens to me. Don't let them find my daughter." Dawn broke cold and gray through the pines. Rafe hadn't slept. He'd spent the night sitting by the cabin's broken window, watching the forest, listening to every sound. Claire had drifted in and out of consciousness, mumbling warnings that made no sense. Daisy had finally fallen asleep curled against her mother, one hand still clutching Claire's sleeve. Now, in the pale morning light, Rafe could see how bad things really were. Claire's face was swollen, bruised purple and yellow. Her breathing came shallow and painful. She needed a hospital. But something in her desperate warning last night told him that a hospital might be exactly where they were waiting. Whoever they were. He was about to check Claire's pulse again when he heard it. An engine. Distant but growing closer. Rafe moved to the window and peered through a gap in the boards. Through the trees, maybe half a mile down the logging road, he spotted headlights sweeping back and forth. A truck. Moving slowly. Searching. Damn, he breathed. He turned and crouched beside the cot, shaking Claire's shoulder gently. Hey! Wake up. We've got company. Claire's eyes snapped open, instantly alert despite the pain. How many? Can't tell yet. One truck that I can see. She tried to sit up, gritting her teeth against the agony. We have to run. Now. You can barely walk. I don't care, her voice was steel wrapped in sandpaper. If they find us, they'll kill you and take Daisy. We run. Now. Rafe looked at Daisy, still asleep, peaceful for the first time since he'd pulled her from that burning car. Then he looked back at the approaching headlights. Okay, he said. But we do this smart. He gathered their few belongings, Claire's torn bag, his jacket, a bottle of water. Then he scooped Daisy into his arms. She stirred but didn't wake, her head lolling against his shoulder. Claire struggled to her feet, using the wall for support. There's a ravine about 200 yards north, Rafe whispered. Thick tree cover. If we can make it there before they reach the cabin. The truck engine grew louder. Closer. They didn't have time to debate. Rafe led them out the back of the cabin, moving as quickly as Claire's injuries allowed. She limped beside him, one arm wrapped around her ribs, her face gray with pain but determined. Every step looked like it cost her, but she didn't slow down. The forest floor was covered in pine needles that muffled their footsteps. Rafe counted that as a small blessing. He could hear the truck clearly now, the crunch of tires on gravel, the low rumble of its engine. Then, voices. This is where the GPS stopped transmitting. You sure? There's nothing out here. The tracker was in her car. This is the last ping before it went dead. Rafe's jaw tightened. Tracker. So the crash hadn't just been planned, they'd been monitoring Claire's every move. He ducked behind a massive fallen log, pulling Claire down beside him. Daisy woke with a start, her eyes wide and frightened. Rafe pressed a finger to his lips. She nodded, understanding immediately, and buried her face against his chest. Through the trees, Rafe could see the cabin now. The truck had pulled up in front, a black pickup with tinted windows and no plates. 3 men climbed out, all wearing dark clothes and carrying handguns holstered at their hips. Not cops. Not paramedics. Hunters. Check inside, one of them ordered. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a scar running down his left cheek. The leader. 2 men kicked in the cabin door while Scarface stayed by the truck, speaking into a radio. Base, this is Unit 2. We're at the GPS marker. No sign of the targets yet, but there's fresh tire tracks. Motorcycle, looks like. Someone was here. A burst of static, then a cold voice crackled through, find them. They couldn't have gotten far. The woman's half dead, and she's got a kid with her. Check every trail within 5 miles. Scarface lowered the radio and smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Did you hear that, boys? He called toward the cabin. We've got a good Samaritan playing hero. Makes our job easier. Fewer loose ends to tie up. The 2 men emerged from the cabin. Blood on the floor. Fresh. And this, one of them held up a torn piece of fabric, part of the shirt Rafe had used for bandages. So they were here. Scarface scanned the forest, his eyes sweeping right past the fallen log where Rafe and his charges hid. Probably watching us right now. Claire's hand found Rafe's arm, her fingers digging in tight. He could feel her trembling, not from fear, he realized, but from rage. Split up, Scarface ordered. Jenkins, take the east trail. Marcus, west. I'll check north. Radio if you find anything. And remember, the woman and kid, we need alive. The biker? He shrugged. Doesn't matter. The men separated, moving into the trees with practiced efficiency. Rafe waited until Scarface disappeared into the northern woods, the exact direction they needed to go, then turned to Claire. Can you run? He whispered. She nodded, though her face said otherwise. Then we go south. Circle back to my bike after they've spread out. They'll hear the engine. I know. But it's our only shot. Daisy lifted her head. I can walk, she whispered. I won't slow you down. I promise. Something in her voice, that same desperate need to not be a burden, made Rafe's chest tighten. I know you won't, kid, he said. But I'm faster carrying you. Okay? She nodded and wrapped her arms around his neck. Rafe helped Claire to her feet. Stay close. Stay quiet. And whatever happens. A branch snapped somewhere to their left. All three of them froze. Through the trees, maybe 30 yards away, one of the hunters appeared. Marcus. He was looking down at the ground, following their tracks through the disturbed pine needles. His hand moved to his radio. Rafe didn't think. He just moved. Rafe burst from behind the log, closing the distance before Marcus could raise his radio. His fist connected with the hunter's jaw, a solid crack that echoed through the trees. Marcus stumbled backward, reaching for his gun, but Rafe was already on him. He grabbed the man's wrist and twisted hard. The gun clattered to the ground. Marcus swung wild, catching Rafe across the temple. Stars exploded in his vision, but he didn't let go. They grappled, crashing through brush, until Rafe hooked his leg behind Marcus's knee and sent him sprawling. Before the hunter could recover, Rafe grabbed a thick branch and brought it down hard against his skull. Marcus went limp. Rafe! Claire's urgent whisper cut through the ringing in his ears. He turned. She was already moving, dragging Daisy by the hand, limping as fast as her broken body would allow. In the distance, voices shouted. The other hunters had heard the fight. Rafe snatched up Marcus's radio and gun, then ran after them. They crashed through the forest in a desperate sprint. Claire's breathing came in ragged gasps, each one sounding like it tore something inside her. Daisy's little legs pumped hard to keep up, but she was fading fast. I can see the bike, Rafe panted, pointing through the trees. His motorcycle sat where he'd hidden it, covered with branches and pine needles. He'd stashed it off the trail last night, hoping it wouldn't be spotted. Now it was their only lifeline. Behind them, shouts grew louder. Marcus! Marcus, report. They didn't have time for stealth. Rafe yanked the branches away and threw his leg over the bike. Claire climbed on behind him, biting back a scream as her ribs protested. Daisy squeezed between them, her small body pressed tight against Rafe's back. Hold on, he said, and kicked the engine to life. The motorcycle roared, shattering the forest's silence. There. A gunshot cracked through the air. Bark exploded from a tree inches from Rafe's head. He twisted the throttle and the bike launched forward, fishtailing on loose dirt before the tires found purchase. Another shot rang out. Then another. Rafe kept his head low and guided them through the narrow logging trail, branches whipping past, roots threatening to throw them. Daisy's arms locked around his waist like a vice. He could feel her shaking, could hear Claire's labored breathing in his ear. But they were moving. They were alive. The trail opened onto a gravel road. Rafe leaned into the turn and accelerated, putting distance between them and the hunters. He risked a glance at the side mirror, no headlights yet. But they'd come. These men didn't strike him as the type to give up. "Where are we going?" Claire shouted over the wind. "Good question." The nearest town was Millbrook, population maybe 3,000, 40 miles northeast. But there was something closer. An old farming community called Ridgeway. Smaller. Quieter. And it had what they needed most. "Someone who owes me a favor," Rafe called back. The motorcycle ate up miles of empty backroads. Morning sun broke over the hills, painting everything gold and amber. Under different circumstances, it might have been beautiful. Now it just meant they were more exposed. Daisy hadn't said a word since they'd fled. Rafe could feel her trembling against his back, her breath coming in small hiccups that might have been sobs. He wanted to tell her it was okay, that they were safe now. But that would be a lie. "Mommy's really hurt," Daisy suddenly whispered, so quiet Rafe almost missed it over the engine. He glanced back. Claire's eyes were closed, her face pale as milk. Her grip around his waist had loosened. "Claire." He called her name louder. "Claire, stay with me." Her eyes fluttered open. "Mokai," she slurred. "Just tired. Don't sleep. You hear me? Talk to Daisy. Keep yourself awake." "Mommy?" Daisy twisted around, her voice rising in panic. "Mommy, please don't sleep. Please." "I'm here, baby," Claire managed, though her words ran together. "Right here. Tell me about the beach," Daisy begged. "Remember? You said we'd go to the beach." Claire's voice came weak but determined. "After this is over. You can build sandcastles. Big ones. Will Rafe come too?" The question caught him off guard. Claire must have felt him stiffen because she added, He's welcome. If he wants." Rafe didn't answer. He was too focused on the road ahead and the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. 12 hours ago, he'd been a guy riding home, minding his own business. Now he had a half-conscious woman and a traumatized kid depending on him to keep them alive. And somewhere behind them, men with guns were hunting them down. The Marcus's radio crackled in Rafe's jacket pocket. He'd forgotten he'd taken it. Now Scarface's voice came through, cold and clear. "All units, they're heading northeast on Route 7. Black motorcycle, 3 riders. I want roadblocks on every junction. Call in whoever you need to. Nobody leaves this county." Rafe's blood ran cold. Roadblocks. How many men did these people have? He took the next turn hard, veering off Route 7 onto a narrow farm road he'd used once before. It would add time, but it might keep them off the hunter's radar. "Rafe?" Daisy's small voice again. "Are the bad men going to catch us?" He thought about lying. Thought about giving her some comforting platitude about everything being fine. Instead, he said, "Not if I can help it, kid." "Do you promise?" Rafe's hands tightened on the handlebars. "Yeah," he said. "I promise." Daisy pressed her face against his back. "Okay. I believe you." Those 3 words hit him harder than Marcus's punch had. "I believe you." When was the last time someone had said that to him and meant it? Ahead, through a gap in the trees, he spotted the first buildings of Ridgeway. Almost there. The farm sat at the edge of Ridgeway, surrounded by fields that had long since gone to seed. A weathered sign hung crooked on the gate, "Anderson Farm, no trespassing." Rafe ignored it and guided his bike up the dirt driveway, past rusted farm equipment and a chicken coop that had seen better days. The house itself was a two-story structure with peeling white paint and shutters that hung at odd angles. But Rafe knew better than to judge by appearances. Ruth Anderson kept the outside looking neglected on purpose. It discouraged visitors. He killed the engine and climbed off, his legs shaky from the long ride. Claire nearly collapsed as he helped her down. Her skin was clammy, her breathing shallow and rapid. Not good. Daisy, can you stand? Rafe asked. The little girl nodded and slid off the bike, but her legs buckled. She'd been holding on so tightly for so long that her muscles had locked up. Rafe caught her before she hit the ground. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm sorry, I'm trying to be strong. You are strong, Rafe said, lifting her with one arm while supporting Claire with the other. Strongest kid I know. He half-carried, half-dragged them to the front door and kicked it 3 times in a specific pattern. Old signal. Ruth would recognize it. 30 seconds passed. Then a voice called from inside, doors open. But if you're selling something, I'm armed. It's Rafe, Ruth. A pause. Then bolts sliding back, chains rattling. The door swung open to reveal a woman in her late 50s with steel-gray hair pulled into a tight bun and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She wore faded jeans and a flannel shirt, and Rafe knew from experience that she kept a shotgun within arm's reach at all times. Ruth's gaze swept over the 3 of them, battered, bloody, desperate. Jesus, Rafe. What did you get yourself into? Long story. This woman needs medical attention. Now. Ruth's expression hardened into something professional and efficient. Whatever personal questions she had, they could wait. Bring her to the back room. Girl, what's your name? Daisy, came the tiny response. Okay, Daisy. You come with me. We're going to help your mama. The back room had been Ruth's clinic once, back when she practiced medicine legally. Now it was a clean, well-lit space filled with medical supplies that Rafe knew better than to ask about. Ruth had left conventional medicine after the hospital board tried to force her to turn away patients who couldn't pay. She'd told them exactly what they could do with their regulations and set up here instead, treating migrant workers, people without insurance, anyone who needed help and couldn't get it anywhere else. Rafe laid Claire on the examination table. Ruth washed her hands at the sink and snapped on latex gloves, her movements quick and practiced. Tell me what happened, she said, gently probing Claire's ribs. Rafe gave her the abbreviated version while Ruth worked. Car crash. Explosion. Men hunting them. Ruth listened without comment, her face unreadable. She checked Claire's pupils with a penlight, examined the makeshift splint on her arm, pressed carefully around her abdomen. Cracked ribs, definitely. The arm's broken, you did a decent job stabilizing it. Possible internal bruising but no active bleeding that I can detect. She's going into shock though. Needs fluids, antibiotics, pain management. Ruth moved to a locked cabinet and began pulling out supplies. The bigger question is what caused this crash. She said they rammed her, Rafe replied. Ruth paused, an 4 bag in her hands. They rammed her. Deliberately. Yes. And now they're hunting her. Yes. Ruth looked at Claire's unconscious form, then at Daisy, who sat in a corner chair with her knees pulled to her chest. That child was in the car too? Rafe nodded. Ruth's jaw tightened. She turned back to Claire and began setting up the 4 with swift, angry efficiency. People who'd hurt a woman and a kid. They're not people anymore. They're rabid dogs. She worked in silence for several minutes, inserting the 4, cleaning and properly bandaging wounds, giving Claire an injection of something that made her breathing ease. Daisy watched everything with hollow eyes. Finally, Ruth straightened and stripped off her gloves. She'll live. But she needs rest. Real rest. At least 48 hours without moving or she risks internal bleeding. Those ribs are close to puncturing a lung. We might not have 48 hours, Rafe said quietly. Then you'd better find a way to buy them. Ruth moved to Daisy and knelt in front of her. Honey, are you hurt anywhere? Daisy shook her head. Can I check? Just to be sure. A small nod. Ruth examined Daisy with the same gentle efficiency she'd used on Claire. Superficial cuts and bruises, nothing serious. But as she worked, Daisy started talking in that disconnected way trauma survivors sometimes did. I told him to take Mommy instead of me, she said, staring at nothing. At the car. I told him she was hurt worse. That I could wait. Ruth's hands stilled. You told him to leave you in a burning car? Mommy needed help more. Ruth looked at Rafe, something like horror in her eyes. Then back at Daisy. Sweetheart, how old are you? 6. Almost 7-inch. And you thought? You thought the right thing to do was sacrifice yourself? Daisy's lower lip trembled. Someone had to stay behind. We'd slow him down if he took both. I thought, her voice broke. I thought if someone had to stay, it should be me. Because Mommy's more important. Ruth stood abruptly and walked to the window, her shoulders rigid. When she turned back, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Listen to me, Daisy. You are never less important than anyone else. Not your mother, not anyone. You understand? Whatever made you think that way, it's wrong. It's so wrong. Daisy looked down at her hands. But I'm just a kid. Mommy takes care of me. Without her, I'm nothing. No, Ruth's voice was fierce. You're everything. You're a whole person who deserves to be saved just as much as anybody. Daisy didn't respond. Just curled tighter into herself. Ruth looked at Rafe. Where did she learn to think like that? Rafe had been wondering the same thing. Claire slept for 3 hours straight, her breathing finally steady and even. Ruth had set up a cot for Daisy in the corner, but the girl refused to sleep. She sat cross-legged on the floor beside her mother's bed, watching, waiting. Rafe used the time to search through Claire's bag. He found it under the examination table where he'd dropped it, a worn canvas messenger bag with a broken strap. Inside, a wallet with $43, lip balm, a pack of crayons, and a brown expandable folder stuffed with papers. Rafe spread the documents across Ruth's kitchen table. The first page was a report from the Environmental Protection Agency. Lots of technical jargon he didn't fully understand, but certain phrases jumped out: illegal discharge, toxic contamination, groundwater poisoning. The report was stamped, confidential, in red ink. The second document was a series of photographs printed on regular copy paper. They showed a construction site beside a river. In one image, a massive pipe jutted from the ground, dark liquid pouring into the water. Another showed dead fish floating downstream. A third captured workers in hazmat suits sealing the pipe with concrete. The fourth photo showed a sign, Meridian Chemical Industries, private property. Rafe felt something cold settle in his gut. Meridian Chemical. He'd heard that name before. Big corporation, government contracts, enough money to make problems disappear. The kind of company that didn't appreciate whistleblowers. The last document was a handwritten letter on official county letterhead. Ms. Hartwell, after reviewing your concerns regarding Meridian Chemical Industries, we have determined there is insufficient evidence to warrant further investigation. The company maintains all necessary permits and operates within federal guidelines. We appreciate your civic engagement but must ask you to cease contact with this office regarding this matter. Sincerely, County Commissioner James Vance. Rafe set the letter down. Claire hadn't just witnessed something. She'd tried to report it. And been shut down. So she'd kept digging, kept collecting evidence. And Meridian had decided to silence her permanently. Find anything interesting? Rafe looked up. Ruth stood in the doorway, arms crossed. She's a whistleblower, Rafe said. Saw something she wasn't supposed to see. Tried to report it through proper channels. They ignored her. So the company sent men to kill her. Looks that way. Ruth moved to the table and picked up one of the photographs. Meridian Chemical. I know that name. They have a plant about 60 miles north of here. There were rumors a few years back, cancer clusters in the nearby towns, livestock dying. But nothing ever came of it. Too much money involved. Yeah, well, Claire's got photos now. Documentation. Real evidence. Which is why they want her dead. Ruth set the photo down carefully. What about the girl? Rafe glanced toward the back room where Daisy kept her vigil. Leverage. Claire's smart enough to make copies, hide them somewhere. If they kill her, the evidence goes public. But if they threaten the kid, she'll give them everything. Exactly. Ruth was quiet for a moment. Then, you're in over your head, Rafe. I know. These aren't street thugs. This is a corporation with unlimited resources and no conscience. They'll keep coming. I know that too. So what's your plan? Run forever? Rafe didn't have an answer. He'd been operating on pure instinct since the moment he saw that burning car. Save them. Protect them. Keep moving. But Ruth was right, they couldn't run forever. Eventually, the hunters would catch up. He needed a real plan. The sound of movement came from the back room. Rafe and Ruth both turned as Claire appeared in the doorway, leaning heavily against the frame. Her face was pale but alert, and her eyes found the documents on the table immediately. You went through my bag, she said. Not angry. Just stating a fact. Needed to know what we're dealing with, Rafe replied. Claire limped into the kitchen and sank into a chair. Then you know they won't stop. Meridian has people everywhere, police, politicians, judges. I tried going through official channels. Look where it got me. Why didn't you just go to the media? Ruth asked. I did. 3 different news outlets. 2 wouldn't touch it, said they needed more verification. The third, Claire's hand trembled as she picked up one of the photos. The reporter who was helping me died in a house fire 2 weeks ago. They ruled it accidental. The room fell silent. That's when I knew, Claire continued. I knew they'd come for me next. So I packed up Daisy and ran. I thought if I could just get to the state capitol, find someone higher up the chain who wasn't in Meridian's pocket, she laughed bitterly. I didn't even make it 50 miles. Where's the rest of the evidence? Rafe asked. Claire looked at him sharply. Why? Because if Meridian thinks you're the only one who has it, you're dead the second they find you. But if copies exist, if other people have it. It doesn't matter, Claire's voice was flat. They know about Daisy. They'll use her against me. They'll make me watch them hurt her until I tell them everything. Then they'll kill us both anyway. Not if we disappear, Rafe said. New names, new lives. Far away from here. With what money? I have $40 and a broken arm, Claire shook her head. You've done enough. More than enough. Take me to the nearest police station and drop me off. At least Daisy. Mommy? Everyone turned. Daisy stood in the doorway, her face streaked with tears. Mommy, I heard what you said. About them. About them hurting me, her voice was barely a whisper. I won't tell them anything. I promise. Even if it hurts really bad, I won't tell. Claire's face crumpled. Baby, no. I'll be brave, Daisy insisted. I'll be so brave you'll be proud of me. Rafe felt something break inside his chest. This little girl, 6 years old, already prepared to be tortured rather than put her mother at risk. Ruth made a choked sound and turned away. Claire reached for her daughter, pulling her close despite the pain it caused. You don't have to be brave like that. You don't ever have to be brave like that. But the bad men are not going to touch you, Rafe said, his voice harder than he intended. I'm not letting that happen. Daisy looked at him with those two old eyes. You can't stop them forever. Watch me. By nightfall, Ruth had given them everything she could spare: antibiotics for Claire, clean clothes, a prepaid phone with no GPS tracking, and $300 in cash. She'd also provided something more valuable: a contact name in Nevada who could create new identities. It wasn't much, but it was a start. You need to get at least 2 states away, Ruth said as they prepared to leave. Put as much distance between you and Meridian as possible. Rafe nodded, helping Claire onto the bike. She moved better now, the pain medication doing its job, but her face was still drawn and gray. Thank you, Claire said to Ruth. For everything. Don't thank me yet. Just survive. Ruth turned to Daisy and knelt down, pressing something into the girl's hand. This is a special stone. My grandmother gave it to me when I was about your age. She said it brings courage to whoever holds it. Daisy opened her palm. A smooth blue stone, worn by years of handling, glinted in the porch light. But I already used up all my courage, Daisy whispered. No, sweetheart. Courage doesn't run out. It grows back stronger every time you use it. Ruth squeezed her hand gently. Keep it safe. Daisy nodded and tucked the stone into her pocket. They rode through the night, taking back roads and farm routes, avoiding highways where cameras might catch them. The desert stretched endlessly around them, flat, dark, empty. Rafe pushed the bike hard, eating up miles, creating distance. Claire had insisted they couldn't afford to go far, not with their limited cash. So when Rafe spotted the Desert Rose Motel just after midnight, a rundown strip of rooms off Highway 40, he pulled in. $29 a night, no questions asked. That was their price range. The clerk barely looked up from his phone as Rafe paid in cash and signed the register with a fake name. Room 7 was exactly what Rafe expected: water-stained ceiling, musty smell, 2 double beds with thin floral comforters, a bathroom the size of a closet. But the door had a deadbolt and a chain, and after everything, that felt like luxury. Claire collapsed onto the nearest bed. Daisy climbed up beside her, curling into her mother's side. I'll take first watch, Rafe said, dragging a chair to the window. You need sleep too, Claire protested weakly. I'll sleep when we're safe. He positioned himself where he could see the parking lot through a gap in the curtains. 3 other cars sat scattered across the cracked asphalt. No black trucks. No movement. Hours passed. Claire's breathing evened out into sleep. Daisy tossed and turned, whimpering occasionally. Rafe watched the highway, watched the parking lot, watched the stars wheel overhead. Around 4 in the morning, he heard it, the low rumble of an engine. Rafe tensed, hand moving to the gun he'd taken from Marcus. A vehicle was pulling into the motel parking lot. Slowly. Deliberately. A black pickup truck. No, Rafe breathed. The truck crept past the office, headlights sweeping across the row of rooms. It stopped 3 doors down from theirs. The engine idled. Rafe moved fast. He shook Claire awake, hand over her mouth to keep her quiet. Her eyes flew open, instantly alert. They're here, he mouthed. Claire sat up carefully, her face draining of color. She looked at Daisy, still sleeping, and something like despair crossed her features. Bathroom, Rafe whispered. Hide in the tub. Don't make a sound. What about Daisy? Rafe glanced around the tiny room. Not many options. His eyes landed on the narrow cabinet beneath the broken TV stand, the kind meant for extra blankets. He'd checked it earlier out of habit. Empty. Trust me, he said. He lifted Daisy as gently as possible. She stirred but didn't wake, exhaustion had finally claimed her. Rafe slid her into the cabinet, curling her small body into the space. She fit, barely. He draped his leather jacket over her for extra concealment and closed the door most of the way, leaving a small crack for air. Claire was already in the bathroom, climbing awkwardly into the tub. Rafe pulled the shower curtain closed just as footsteps crunched across the gravel outside. He grabbed 2 empty beer bottles from the trash, messed up his hair, and unbuttoned his shirt halfway. Then he stumbled to the door just as someone knocked. "Yeah, what?" Rafe called, slurring his words. "Open up." Motel management. Rafe recognized the voice. Not Scarface, but one of the others. Jenkins, maybe. He unlocked the door and opened it 6 inches, keeping the chain engaged. "Management don't come knocking at 4 a.m., man. What's this about?" A flashlight beam hit him in the face. Rafe squinted, doing his best impression of a drunk biker who'd taken the wrong room. "We got a noise complaint," the hunter said. "You alone in there?" "Yeah. Just me and my good friend Jack Daniels." Rafe held up one of the empty bottles. "Why? You want a party?" The hunter tried to peer past him into the room. "Mind if I take a look?" "Actually, yeah, I do mind. I paid for this room fair and square." "You got a badge? Some kind of warrant?" The flashlight lowered slightly. Through the gap, Rafe could see the hunter's hand resting on his hip, near where a gun would be. "Sir, I need you to step aside. And I need you to come back with an actual manager or get lost." Rafe let some steel enter his voice. "I know my rights." A tense silence stretched between them. Rafe kept his body blocking the doorway, kept his expression annoyed but not threatening. Just another drunk causing problems at a cheap motel. Finally, the hunter stepped back. "Sorry to bother you. Must have been the wrong room." "Yeah. Must have been." The hunter turned and walked back toward the truck, but slowly, reluctantly. Rafe watched through the crack in the door as the man climbed into the passenger seat. The truck didn't move. Just sat there, engine idling. They were waiting. Watching. Rafe closed the door carefully and re-engaged the chain. His heart hammered against his ribs. That had been too close. Way too close. He moved to the cabinet and opened it. Daisy was awake now, her eyes huge in the darkness, his jacket clutched against her chest. "Rafe," she whispered. "Was that the bad men?" "Yeah, kid. But they're gone now." She climbed out on shaky legs. "I heard them. I was so scared but I didn't move. I didn't make any sound." "You did perfect." Daisy's face crumpled. "I slowed you down again, didn't I? If it was just you and Mommy, you could have run. But you had to hide me because I'm too small and I can't keep up and." "Stop." Rafe knelt in front of her. "You didn't slow us down. You hear me? You're not a burden." "But I am," she sobbed. "I heard Mommy say it. She said they'll use me against her. She said I make everything harder." Claire emerged from the bathroom, her face stricken. "Daisy, no. Baby, that's not. It's true." Daisy's voice rose, then dropped to a broken whisper. "I wish they'd just taken me instead. Then you and Rafe could run and be safe." The truck sat in the parking lot until sunrise, then finally pulled away. But Rafe knew they couldn't stay. If the hunters had found them once, they'd come back with reinforcements. They left the motel as soon as the clerk changed shifts, slipping out while the new guy was busy with coffee and cigarettes. The morning air was already hot, promising a scorching day ahead. Claire hadn't spoken since Daisy's breakdown. She sat rigid behind Rafe on the bike, her silence heavy with guilt. Daisy wedged between them, equally quiet, her small hands gripping Rafe's jacket. They rode for 2 hours before Rafe spotted what he was looking for, a rest stop off a quiet highway. Just a picnic area with weathered tables and a water fountain that barely worked. But it was empty and had clear sight lines in all directions. He killed the engine. "We need to talk," Rafe said. Claire climbed off the bike, moving carefully. Her ribs were healing but still tender. "There's nothing to talk about. We need to keep moving." "No. We need to figure this out before that kid destroys herself trying to save you." Claire flinched like he'd slapped her. "Don't you think I know that? Don't you think I see what this is doing to her? Then do something about it." "Like what?" Claire's voice rose. "Tell her everything's fine when men with guns are hunting us? Lie to her and say she's not in danger?" Daisy slid off the bike and walked to one of the picnic tables, sitting down with her back to them. Her shoulders were hunched, her head down. Rafe lowered his voice. "She thinks she's the reason you're going to die. She thinks if she wasn't here, you'd be safe." "That's not." Claire stopped, her hands shaking. "Maybe she's right." "What?" "You heard me." Claire's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "If I didn't have Daisy, I could disappear. Go underground. They'd never find me. But I can't do that with a 6-year-old. I can't drag her through that life. So what are you saying?" Claire turned away, wrapping her arms around herself. "I'm saying maybe I should turn myself in. Make a deal. Give them everything they want in exchange for letting Daisy go to my sister in Oregon. She'd be safe there. She'd have a normal life. They'll kill you. I know. And you think Daisy's going to be okay with that? You think she'll just move on, knowing her mother sacrificed herself? She'll survive. Kids are resilient." Rafe grabbed Claire's arm, forcing her to look at him. "That's what you think? That she'll just bounce back after watching her mother give up? After spending her whole life knowing you chose death over fighting for her?" Claire's composure cracked. "I'm not giving up on her. I'm trying to save her. By teaching her that sacrifice is love. That the people who matter most should always be the ones left behind." Rafe shook his head. "You're doing the exact same thing she tried to do in that burning car. And it's just as wrong. Don't you dare." "Mommy?" They both turned. Daisy stood a few feet away, Ruth's blue stone clutched in her hand. Her face was streaked with fresh tears. "Are you going to leave me?" Daisy asked. "Like the bad men want?" Claire's face crumpled. She dropped to her knees, ignoring the pain, and reached for her daughter. "Come here, baby. Please come here." Daisy walked into her mother's arms slowly, like she wasn't sure she was allowed. Claire held her tight, rocking slightly. "I'm so sorry," Claire whispered. "I'm so sorry you heard that. I'm sorry for everything. I don't want you to go away," Daisy sobbed. "I don't care if the bad men are coming. I don't care if I slow you down. I just want you to stay. I know. I know you do. Then why did you say you should leave?" Claire pulled back, cupping Daisy's face in her hands. "Because I'm scared. Because I don't know how to protect you from these people. Because every choice I make feels like the wrong 1 inch. But Rafe's protecting us. Right?" Daisy looked at him with desperate hope. "You said you wouldn't let the bad men get us." Rafe felt the weight of that trust like a physical thing. "I meant it. But Mommy still wants to leave." "No," Claire's voice was firm now. "No, I don't. I was being stupid and scared. Rafe's right, giving up isn't protecting you. It's just. Giving up. Daisy studied her mother's face. So we stay together? We stay together. All three of us. Until this is over. You promise? I promise. Daisy turned to Rafe. Do you promise too? This was dangerous territory. Rafe knew better than to make promises he might not be able to keep. But looking at this little girl who'd already been abandoned by every system meant to protect her, he found himself nodding. Yeah, kid. I promise. Daisy threw her arms around his legs, hugging him tight. Rafe stood frozen for a moment, then awkwardly patted her head. Claire stood up, wincing. Okay. So what's the plan? We can't run forever. No, Rafe agreed. We can't. So we go on offense. Meaning? Meaning we stop hiding and start fighting back. You said you tried to report this through official channels. What about unofficial ones? Claire frowned. Like what? Like the internet. Social media. Every news outlet in the country at once. Make it so big, so public, that Meridian can't make it disappear. They'll kill us before we get the chance. Not if we do it right. Not if we're smart about it. Rafe pulled out the prepaid phone Ruth had given them. You still have digital copies of everything? Cloud storage. But they're tracking my accounts. The second I log in. Then we use a public computer. Library, internet cafe, somewhere with lots of people and cameras. We upload everything, tag every environmental group and journalist we can find, and get out before Meridian even knows what hit them. Claire considered this. It might work. But we'd need to move fast. Once it's out there, they'll come after us hard. They're already coming after us hard. At least this way, we're not just running. We're ending it. Daisy looked up at both of them. Will it make the bad men go away? Some of them, Rafe said. Maybe not all. But it'll make it a lot harder for them to hurt us without the whole world watching. Okay, Daisy nodded seriously. Then let's do it. Claire laughed, a broken, exhausted sound. When did my baby get so brave? Ruth said courage grows back stronger, Daisy said, holding up the blue stone. Maybe mine did. Rafe checked his watch. There's a town about 40 miles west. Big enough to have a library with public computers. Small enough that we won't stand out too much. How long will we have before they find us? If we're lucky? An hour. Maybe 2 inch. Claire straightened her shoulders. Then let's stop wasting time. The town of Copper Ridge sprawled across the highway like something out of an old western, single-story buildings with faded paint, pickup trucks parked at odd angles, a diner with a blinking neon sign that read E.T., the library wouldn't open for another 2 hours. We need supplies, Rafe said, pulling into a gas station. Food, water, fuel. And we need to do it without drawing attention. He gave Claire most of their remaining cash and sent her into the convenience store with Daisy. He'd been recognized twice already by other bikers passing through. Word traveled fast in his world, and the last thing they needed was someone mentioning they'd seen him. While he filled the tank, a familiar rumble made him look up. 3 motorcycles rolled into the station, their riders wearing leather vests marked with a scorpion emblem. Rafe's chest tightened. The Scorpions, a club he'd run with years ago, before he'd decided that life wasn't for him. Before he'd walked away and made himself scarce. The lead rider pulled off his helmet. Tank. 6'4", 250 pounds of muscle and bad decisions. He'd been Rafe's closest friend once. Well, I'll be damned, Tank said, breaking into a grin. Rafe Mitchell. Heard you were dead. Disappointed? Nah, man. Just surprised. Tank dismounted and clapped Rafe on the shoulder hard enough to bruise. What brings you through Copper Ridge? Thought you went straight, got yourself a construction gig somewhere boring. Just passing through. Alone? Tank's eyes swept over the bike, noting the extra wear on the seat, the small pink hair tie caught on the passenger foot peg. Yeah. Alone. Tank's grin widened. You always were a terrible liar. Who's the girl? Before Rafe could answer, the convenience store door chimed. Claire emerged with Daisy, carrying a bag of supplies. She saw the bikers and froze, instinctively pulling Daisy behind her. Tank's expression shifted from amused to curious. Friend of yours? Something like that. She's pretty. Kid's cute too. Tank's voice had gone flat, professional. He was reading the situation now, battered woman, scared child, Rafe with a gun tucked in his waistband. You in trouble, Rafe? Nothing I can't handle. That's not what I asked. The other two bikers had dismounted now, flanking Tank. Rafe recognized one of them, Snake, who'd always been quick with a knife and slow with forgiveness. The third was younger, unfamiliar. Fresh meat. Claire reached the bike, her movements careful and controlled. She set Daisy on the seat and positioned herself between the girl and the scorpions. We should go, she said quietly to Rafe. In a minute, Rafe turned back to Tank. I need information. Someone put a bounty out. Corporate types paying hunters to track down a woman and a kid. You heard anything? Tank exchanged glances with Snake. Might have. Word on the road is Meridian Chemical is looking for a whistleblower. Paying good money too. 10 grand for information leading to recovery. 20 if you deliver. Rafe's blood went cold. How many people know? Everyone, Tank shrugged. Meridian's not subtle. They've got flyers at every truck stop, every biker bar from here to the state line. Description matches your girl pretty close. Claire's face had gone white. $20,000? For you and the kid, alive and intact. They're calling it a missing persons case, but we all know what it really is. Tank looked at Rafe. Question is, what's your stake in this? You playing hero or is there something else going on? Does it matter? Depends. You claiming her? It was an old term from their club days. Claiming meant protection, meant anyone who touched what was yours answered to you. It also meant responsibility, you owned the consequences of whatever your claim did. Yeah, Rafe said. I'm claiming both of them. Tank nodded slowly. Then you've got bigger problems than hunters. Meridian's hired the Wolves. The name hit Rafe like a punch. The Wolves weren't just another motorcycle club or bounty hunters. They were mercenaries with military training, connections in law enforcement, and a reputation for never failing a contract. When? Rafe asked. They were mobilized yesterday. Should be in the area by tonight, maybe sooner. How many? Full squad. 8, maybe 10 operators. Claire grabbed Rafe's arm. We need to leave. Right now. She's right, Tank said. Wolves don't play around. You stay in one place longer than an hour, they'll triangulate and box you in. Rafe looked at his old friend. Why are you telling me this? Tank's expression softened slightly. Because you saved my sister when her boyfriend got drunk and mean. You didn't have to, but you did. Figure I owe you one solid favor before I pretend I never saw you. He paused. That said, this is it. After today, if the Wolves ask if I've seen you, I'm not lying for you. Can't risk the club. Understood. There's a garage about 10 miles north. Old Dave's place. He's friendly to people who need to disappear. Might have gear you can use. Might know some back roads the Wolves won't. Snake stepped forward. Tank, we can't. We can, and we will. Tank's voice carried authority. Rafe's not our problem. We never saw him, remember? Snake scowled but backed off. Daisy's small voice cut through the tension. Are these the bad men? Everyone looked at her. She stared back with those two old eyes, Ruth's blue stone clutched in her fist. No, kid, Tank said gently. We're not the bad men. But the bad men are coming. You need to go with Rafe and your mama. You need to go right now. Okay, Daisy climbed onto the bike. I'm ready. Tank watched her with something like sadness. She's braver than most grown men I know. Yeah, Rafe agreed. She is. Claire mounted behind Daisy, wrapping her arms around both the girl and Rafe. Thank you, she said to Tank. For the warning. Tank nodded. Don't thank me. Just survive. Hate to think I warned you for nothing. Rafe started the engine. As they pulled out of the gas station, he glanced in his mirror. Tank and his crew were already mounting up, heading in the opposite direction. True to his word, after this, he'd never seen Rafe at all. Who were they? Claire asked. Old friends. Or close enough. Can we trust them? Trust isn't the right word. But they won't rat us out. Not today, anyway. Daisy twisted to look up at him. Rafe? What did that man mean about the wolves? Rafe's hands tightened on the handlebars. It means the people chasing us just got a lot more dangerous. Oh, Daisy was quiet for a moment. Then, please don't leave us like everyone else. Those words again. The same desperate plea she'd made before. I'm not leaving, Rafe said firmly. Not now, not ever. You're stuck with me, kid. Promise? I already promised, didn't I? Daisy leaned against his back, satisfied. Behind them, Claire's grip tightened, whether from pain or fear or something else, Rafe couldn't tell. The road stretched ahead, empty and exposed. Somewhere behind them, professional killers were closing in. Rafe twisted the throttle and the bike surged forward, racing toward a garage owned by a man he barely knew, chasing the slimmest hope of survival. Old Dave's garage sat at the end of a dirt road that wound through rust-colored hills like a dying snake. The building itself was more rust than metal, held together by hope and decades of oil stains. But Dave came through. He'd given them a second-hand helmet for Daisy, extra fuel in jerry cans strapped to the bike, and a detailed map of mining roads that cut through Red Rock Canyon, routes too narrow and treacherous for trucks, but perfect for a motorcycle. The wolves favor vehicles with firepower, Dave had explained, his weathered hands tracing routes on the map. But those canyon roads? They'll have to come at you single file, on bikes or on foot. Levels the field a bit. A bit wasn't great odds, but it was better than nothing. Now, as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, Rafe guided the bike through the canyon. Red rock walls rose hundreds of feet on either side, narrowing in places to barely 20 feet across. The road, if it could be called that, was little more than packed dirt and loose gravel, winding between boulders and scrub brush. Claire's arms were locked around his waist, her breathing labored. The ride had taken everything out of her. Daisy sat wedged between them, silent and watchful. How much farther? Claire asked, her voice thin. Rafe checked the map Dave had given him. 3 miles to the junction. From there, we can. The crack of a rifle shot split the air. Rock exploded inches from the bike's front tire. Rafe swerved hard, nearly losing control on the loose gravel. Get down, he shouted. Another shot. This one hit the canyon wall above them, raining debris. Rafe accelerated, the engine screaming as he pushed the bike to its limits on the treacherous terrain. Behind them, he could hear engines, motorcycles, at least 2, maybe 3. The wolves had found them. The canyon narrowed ahead, forcing Rafe to slow down. He scanned desperately for options. To the left, a jumble of boulders offered cover but no escape. To the right, the canyon wall rose sheer and unclimbable. Then he saw it, a dry wash cutting perpendicular to the main canyon, barely visible behind a screen of juniper trees. Hold on. Rafe cranked the handlebars and sent the bike skidding sideways into the wash. Branches slapped at them as they crashed through the junipers. The bike hit something hard, a buried rock, and went airborne for a heart-stopping second before slamming back down. Claire cried out in pain. Daisy made no sound at all. Rafe killed the engine and jumped off, pulling them both down behind an outcropping of rock. He yanked the bike down too, out of sight. Stay here, he whispered. Don't move. Don't make a sound. Claire grabbed his arm. Where are you going? To even the odds. He pulled the gun he'd taken from Marcus, checked the magazine. 6 rounds. Not great, but it would have to do. The motorcycle engines grew louder, then stopped. Silence fell over the canyon, broken only by the whisper of wind through stone. Rafe crept to the edge of the outcropping and peered around. 2 riders had stopped at the mouth of the wash, their bikes idling. Both wore dark tactical gear and helmets with tinted visors. Both carried rifles. Professional. Military bearing. These were the wolves. A third rider pulled up behind them. He removed his helmet, revealing a scarred face and cold eyes. The leader. Tracks end here, one of the others said, dismounting. They went into the wash. The leader studied the terrain with a tactical eye. It's a trap site. Good cover, limited exits. Mitchell's smarter than the file suggested. So they knew his name. That wasn't good. Orders, sir. Reed, you take the high ground. Kovacs, with me. We flushed them out. The leader pulled his sidearm and chambered around. Remember, woman and child are worth 20,000 each alive. The biker's worth nothing. If he shows resistance, put him down. Rafe's mind raced. 3 trained operators, 2 with rifles. He had 6 bullets and 2 civilians to protect. The math didn't work. Unless he changed the equation. He spotted what he needed, a cluster of loose rocks piled precariously on a ledge about 30 feet up the canyon wall. Years of erosion had left them balanced on the edge, waiting for the right push. Rafe moved silently through the rocks, circling toward the ledge. Behind him, he could hear the wolves entering the wash, their footsteps crunching on gravel. He had maybe 2 minutes before they found Claire and Daisy. He reached the base of the wall and started climbing. The rock was loose, unstable. Each handhold threatened to give way. But Rafe had spent years on construction sites, scaling scaffolding and steel beams. He knew how to move, where to put his weight. He was 10 feet up when a voice called out, "Contact." "I've got eyes on the woman and child." No more time. Rafe hauled himself onto the ledge and threw his weight against the largest boulder. It didn't budge. He braced his feet and pushed harder, muscles screaming. Below, the leader's voice, "Hands where I can see them." "Now." Claire's voice, defiant despite the fear, "My daughter doesn't need to see this. Let me send her away first. Nobody's going anywhere." Rafe pushed again. The boulder shifted an inch. Another inch. Last chance. Hands up, or. The boulder gave way. It tumbled down the canyon wall, gathering speed, dislodging other rocks in a cascading avalanche. The sound was deafening, tons of stone crashing down like thunder. Rafe heard shouts, the scream of motorcycle engines trying to reverse. Then impact, the sickening crunch of rock meeting metal and bone. When the dust settled, Rafe scrambled down. One of the bikes was crushed beneath a boulder the size of a car. Another lay on its side, its rider, Kovacs, pinned beneath debris, unconscious or worse. The leader had dodged the worst of it, but his rifle was gone, buried somewhere in the rubble. He stood 20 feet from where Claire and Daisy huddled, his sidearm raised but wavering. Rafe dropped behind him, gun pressed to the back of his head. "Drop it." The leader froze. "You're making a mistake, Mitchell. You can't win this." "Maybe not. But I can make sure you lose." Rafe's finger tightened on the trigger. "Drop the gun." The weapon clattered to the ground. "On your knees." The leader complied, moving slowly. "There are 5 more of us. They'll be here in 20 minutes. You gained nothing. I gained 20 minutes. That's enough." Rafe looked at Claire. "You and Daisy okay?" Claire nodded, holding Daisy close. The girl's face was pale but determined. Rafe kept his gun trained on the leader. "I've got questions. You're going to answer them." "I don't think so." "Then you're going to die right here, right now. Your choice." The leader's jaw tightened. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, "What do you want to know? Who ordered the hit? Who at Meridian wants them dead?" The leader smiled, cold, predatory. "You really don't know? It's not just Meridian. This goes higher than some chemical company. Government contracts, military applications, billions in revenue. Your girlfriend stumbled onto something that could bring down senators, generals, corporate executives." Claire's face went white. "Oh God. So yeah," the leader continued. "They want you dead. And they'll keep sending people until you are. Because you're not fighting a company anymore. You're fighting a system." Rafe felt something cold settle in his stomach. This was bigger than he'd thought. Much bigger. Rafe zip-tied the leader's hands with strips torn from a bungee cord and left him sitting against a rock. Kovacs was still unconscious, pinned under debris. The third wolf, Reed, had fled when the rockslide started, probably to report back to the others. 20 minutes, Rafe said, checking his watch. "Maybe less. We need to move." But Claire didn't move. She stood frozen, staring at nothing, her face ashen. "Claire? It's too big," she whispered. "If what he said is true, senators, generals, we can't fight that. We're already dead." Daisy tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, we have to go." "There's nowhere to go, baby. Don't you understand? There's nowhere left." Rafe grabbed Claire's shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "Listen to me. You want to give up? Fine. But not here. Not in front of your daughter." Claire's eyes focused on him, then shifted to Daisy. The girl stood holding Ruth's blue stone, tears streaming down her face but her expression resolute. "Mommy, please," Daisy said. "You promised we'd stay together. You promised." Something in Claire's expression shifted. The despair receded, replaced by fierce determination. "You're right. I did promise," she straightened, wincing at the pain in her ribs. "What do we do?" "We do exactly what we planned," Rafe said. "We make it public. All of it. Right now. But the library won't." "Forget the library. We don't have time for subtle." Rafe pulled out the prepaid phone and handed it to Claire. "You said you have everything in cloud storage. Can you access it from this?" "Yes, but they're monitoring." "Let them monitor. We're not hiding anymore. We upload everything to every platform we can reach. Twitter, Facebook, news sites, environmental groups. We spam it everywhere before they can shut us down." Claire took the phone with shaking hands. "They'll know exactly where we are. They already know. At least this way, we'll have witnesses." The leader, still sitting bound against the rock, laughed. "You think posting online will save you? They'll scrub it in minutes. Discredit you. Call it fake news, Russian disinformation, whatever narrative works. You'll be dead and buried before anyone takes you seriously. Maybe, Rafe said. But once it's out there, it's out there. Can't put that genie back in the bottle. You're delusional. And you're zip-tied to a rock. So I'm winning. Rafe turned his attention to the canyon walls. About a quarter-mile back, he'd spotted what looked like an old mining tower, probably a communications relay of some kind. If they could get high enough, the phone signal would be stronger, the upload faster. There, he said, pointing. We go up. Claire looked at the steep slope and the crumbling tower. I don't know if I can climb that. Then I'll carry you. With your injuries? While protecting Daisy? Be realistic. I can help, Daisy said quietly. Both adults looked at her. I can help Mommy climb, Daisy continued. I'm small, but I'm strong. You said so, Rafe. Rafe crouched in front of her. You sure, kid? Daisy nodded, clutching the blue stone tighter. My courage grew back. Ruth said it would. They made the climb in agonizing minutes that felt like hours. Rafe led, testing each foothold, finding the safest path. Daisy came behind him, then Claire, moving slowly but steadily. Every few feet, Daisy would stop and encourage her mother, her small voice fierce with determination. You can do it, Mommy. Just a little more. I'm trying, baby. You're doing so good. You're the bravest mommy ever. Claire's eyes filled with tears, but she kept climbing. They reached the tower just as the sun touched the horizon, painting the canyon in shades of orange and red. The structure was old, rusted, but still standing. At the top, a cellular antenna pointed skyward, decommissioned years ago but still providing line of sight to the nearest tower. Claire collapsed against the metal railing, gasping for breath. Rafe handed her the phone. Do it, he said. Now. Claire's fingers flew over the screen, logging into accounts, downloading files, uploading them to every platform she could access. Rafe watched the canyon below. In the distance, he could see dust rising, vehicles approaching. The rest of the wolves. How long? He asked. 2 minutes. Maybe 3. The files are large and the connection is. Claire's phone buzzed. Oh no. What? My main account is locked. They must have been watching for login attempts. She switched screens frantically. But I have backups. I made copies on secondary accounts. I'm uploading from those. Progress bars crawled across the screen. 50%. 60. Come on, Claire muttered. Come on. Below, the vehicles had reached the base of the canyon. Doors slammed. Voices shouted orders. 70%. 80. They're coming up, Daisy said, peering over the edge. She was right. Rafe could see figures moving through the rocks, climbing fast, tactical and efficient. 90%. Almost there, Claire breathed. 95%. A voice called from below, Hartwell. It's over. Come down now and we'll talk about a deal. Claire ignored them, her eyes locked on the screen. 98%. Claire. The voice was closer now. You have 5 seconds to surrender before we come up shooting. 99%. Mommy? Daisy's voice was small, frightened. 100%. Done. Claire held up the phone. It's uploaded. Everything. She started sharing links, tagging journalists, environmental agencies, politicians known for being anti-corruption. Her fingers moved in a blur, sending the evidence everywhere. Within seconds, notifications started flooding in. Retweets. Shares. News alerts. Claire's Twitter post, including photos of the toxic spill, corporate documents, and her own battered face, had already been seen by thousands. Then tens of thousands. "It's going viral," she whispered in disbelief. Rafe pulled her and Daisy close as armed figures appeared at the top of the tower. But they didn't raise their weapons. Instead, they paused, confused, speaking urgently into radios. One of them, a woman with Lieutenant Bars, lowered her gun entirely. "Stand down," she said into her radio. "I repeat, stand down. Mission's compromised. The evidence is public." Another voice crackled through, angry and desperate, "I don't care. Complete the contract." "Sir, CNN is already running the story. There are camera crews heading to the Meridian plant. If we complete this contract now, we're murderers on national television." A long pause. Then, "Extract. All units extract immediately." The lieutenant looked at Claire. "You just made a lot of powerful people very angry." "Good," Claire said, leaning against Rafe. "That was the point." The wolves withdrew down the tower, moving quickly, professionally. Within minutes, the sound of their vehicles faded into the distance. Daisy looked up at her mother. "Did we win, Mommy?" Claire gathered her daughter into her arms, finally letting herself sob. "Yeah, baby. We won." Rafe watched the sun sink below the canyon rim, painting the sky blood red. They'd won this battle. But the war was just beginning. 5 days later, the coast appeared like a promise on the horizon. The federal marshals had found them at the tower, not the corrupted locals, but agents from the Justice Department's Environmental Crimes Division. Within hours of Claire's uploads going viral, 3 Meridian executives had been arrested. Senator Vance, the one who'd ignored Claire's initial reports, had resigned. The CEO had been stopped at a private airfield trying to flee to a country without extradition. The investigation was just beginning, but it was happening. Really happening. Now Rafe stood on the porch of a small coastal house, watching waves crash against dark rocks. The safe house was tucked into a quiet cove 200 miles from anywhere that mattered, plain, unremarkable, exactly the kind of place people could disappear into. The door opened behind him. Claire stepped out, moving easier now. The worst of her injuries had healed, though she still favored her left side. She'd put on weight, lost the haunted look that had shadowed her eyes. "She's finally asleep," Claire said, leaning against the railing beside him. "Took 3 stories and half a lullaby, but she's out. Kid's been through a lot. We all have." Claire was quiet for a moment. "The prosecutor called this afternoon. They want me to testify before the grand jury next month." "You going to?" "Yeah. It's what I fought for, right? Making sure the truth comes out." She glanced at him. "The marshal said I can have protection for as long as I need it. Daisy too. New identities if we want them." "That's good." "It is." Another pause. "They said you're free to go whenever you want. Your part in this is done. The bounty's been cancelled, the hunters have been called off. You kept your promise, you got us somewhere safe." Rafe heard what she wasn't saying. "You can leave now. You should leave now." "Yeah," he said. "I know." He'd been thinking about it for days. His old life was waiting, construction work, the open road, the freedom of not being responsible for anyone but himself. He could ride out of here tomorrow and never look back. Should look back. "Rafe?" Daisy's voice came from inside the house. He turned. She stood in the doorway wearing pajamas covered in cartoon whales, Ruth's blue stone clutched in one hand, dragging a blanket with the other. "I thought you were asleep," Claire said. "I was. But then I woke up and you weren't there and I got scared." Daisy's eyes found Rafe. "Are you leaving?" "Daisy," Claire started. "Are you?" The girl's voice was steady, but her chin trembled. Rafe crouched down to her level. "What makes you think I'm leaving?" "Because everyone leaves. My daddy left when I was 3. The police left when mommy tried to report the bad things. The news people left when mommy asked for help. She took a shaky breath. Everyone always leaves. That's not fair to Rafe, Claire said gently. He's not obligated to. I know. Daisy looked at the ground. I know he doesn't have to stay. But I wanted, her voice dropped to barely a whisper. I wanted to say thank you. For taking both of us. Even when I said not to. Rafe felt something crack in his chest. This little girl who'd tried to sacrifice herself, who'd been brave beyond measure, who'd learned way too young that the world would abandon her, she was thanking him. Come here, kid, he said. Daisy walked into his arms, and he lifted her up. She wrapped her arms around his neck, holding tight. You know what I think? Rafe said. I think you're the toughest person I've ever met. Tougher than any biker, any marshal, anybody. You know why? Daisy shook her head against his shoulder. Because you keep believing in people even when they let you down. You keep hoping even when it's scary. That's not weakness, kid. That's strength. But everyone still leaves. Not everyone. Rafe looked at Claire, then back at Daisy. Some people stick around. If you let them. Daisy pulled back to look at his face. Are you going to stick around? This was the moment. The clean exit. He could give some gentle excuse, make promises to visit, then disappear into the life he'd had before that burning car in the forest. But looking at Daisy's hopeful face, at Claire's carefully neutral expression that didn't quite hide her own hope, Rafe realized something. He didn't want his old life back. Yeah, he said. I'm sticking around. If that's okay with your mom. Claire's eyes widened. Rafe, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. He set Daisy down but kept holding her hand. Look, I'm not great at this stuff. Never had a family, never stuck in one place too long. But if you'll have me, if you're willing to put up with me, I'd like to try. Claire's careful composure crumbled. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Are you sure? Because Daisy's been through enough disappointment. I've been through enough. If you're going to leave eventually, better to do it now. I'm not leaving. You promise? Daisy asked, squeezing his hand. Rafe smiled. I already promised you twice, didn't I? What's one more time? He knelt down again, looking her straight in the eyes. I promise, Daisy. I'm not going anywhere. Daisy threw herself at him, nearly knocking him over. Claire joined them, and for a moment, the three of them stood tangled together on that porch overlooking the ocean. When they finally pulled apart, Daisy was grinning, the first real, unguarded smile Rafe had seen from her. Can we build sandcastles tomorrow? She asked. You said we could go to the beach, Mommy. We did say that, didn't we? Claire laughed through her tears. And Rafe has to help. He needs to learn how to make really good towers. I'm better at knocking them down, Rafe admitted. Then I'll teach you. Daisy tugged his hand. Come on. You have to tuck me in properly now. Since you're staying. Properly? You have to read a story and do the voices. Claire bit back a smile. She's very particular about her tucking in routine. Great, but Rafe let himself be dragged inside, Daisy chattering about which story he should read and how he needed to do different voices for different characters. Claire followed, pausing at the door to look back at the ocean one last time. Somewhere out there, the legal battles were just beginning. The investigation would take months, maybe years. There would be testimony, cross-examinations, people trying to discredit her. But she'd survived. Daisy had survived. And somehow, impossibly, they'd found someone who didn't leave. Inside, she could hear Rafe attempting a princess voice while Daisy dissolved into giggles. It was terrible. It was perfect. Claire closed the door and went to join them. Later that night, after Daisy was truly asleep and the house had fallen quiet, Rafe stepped back onto the porch. The moon hung full over the water, painting everything silver. Claire found him there. "Thank you," she said. "For everything. For saving us. For staying. Told you I would." "I know. But I didn't really believe it until now." She leaned against the railing beside him. "What changed your mind? About staying?" Rafe thought about it. About that moment in the burning car when a 6-year-old had begged him to leave her behind. About every moment since when she tried to make herself smaller, less important, easier to abandon. "I spent my whole life being the guy who leaves," he said finally. "Figured it was time to be the guy who stays." Claire's hand found his. "She adores you, you know. Talks about you constantly. Her brave Rafe who took both of them. She's the brave one. You all are." Claire squeezed his hand. "My brave family. Family." The word settled over Rafe like his worn leather jacket, unexpected, a little uncomfortable at first, but right. "Yeah," he said, squeezing back. "I guess we are." They stood together watching the waves, three people who'd found each other in fire and chaos and had somehow become something worth keeping. The road had been long. The danger hadn't completely passed. But for the first time in any of their lives, they weren't running anymore. They were home.